City Amps and Guitars. I'm Aaron, and we're here to talk about the Warm Audio mystery boxes and the pedals therein. The one that I really wanted to get, if it came to something that wasn't a drive, had to be, without a doubt, the Mutation Phasor II. That's based on the Mutation Phasor II. Pedal released in the 1960s. It's used by Pink Floyd, it is used by Adrian Boutlou, but its major fame comes from its use in the early 90s on the records Gish and Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness by Billy Corgan and the Smashing Pumpkins. I am a 90s kid in that I was born in the 90s. I love those records, and I have always loved those sounds when other people get them. But you put a six-stage phaser, like the Mutation Phasor II, in my hands, and I think it sounds terrible. I think that four-stage phaser, which is the little orange box that we've all seen 100 times that says MXR on it, or the little silver box that says Bad Stone on it and it's got the switch and the knob, I think those two phasers are the two best phasers that anybody ever built. They were both made in like 1978, and we didn't need to, that was it. Phaser technology need go no farther. They're amazing, they're perfect, four-stage phasers. Six-stage phasers sound silly to me when I play them. So today I'm going to try to find sounds in this pedal that make me a believer in six-stage phases. We've got three controls: feedback, depth, and rate. Rate controls the time of the phasing, depth controls the depth of the phasing, and feedback controls how much of the clean signal is fed back into the system. So we're going to start today with this beautiful Esquire. It is a Brad Paisley signature Esquire made in Mexico with his signature bridge pickup and his hidden secret agent Seymour Duncan pickup under the plate here, which we won't use because it doesn't sound good. At some point, I'm going to disconnect it and turn this thing into a real Esquire where it has the mud switch and everything, because this is just, I understand why they discontinued it. We're going straight into the Mutation Phasor, which is going into our tried and true Princeton Reverb with a 12-inch Jensen speaker, being mic'd by our wonderful WA-19 dynamic microphone going into our universal audio interface. There's no post-processing, which here's what you get. This is our clean sound. And this is with the phaser. So the controls are presently on the phaser, set dead center at noon, which is 5 on the control knob. Everything is straight up and down. It's a good place to start testing a pedal. And on this pedal, doesn't sound good to me. I'm certain it's vaguely Leslie-y. I think you can maybe get something kind of pretty out of it. But if I wanted that kind of sound, I think I'd just go get a Leslie. Or I'd go get a Leslie imitation pedal. I don't think I would seek out this honkin' phaser here. Let's see. I'm going to pull the feedback out, because most phaser pedals that you will encounter don't have a feedback control. They have a set resistive amount of feedback, often it's 0. The Phase 90, it's barely above 0, which is kind of everybody's benchmark for a phaser. So we're going to play with that down for now. On most phasers, single knob phasers, when you move the singular control, you are changing both the depth and the speed. So as the depth goes up, the speed goes up, which those two controls are separated here. So to try not to play it as if we're playing a Phase 90 or a Bad Stone phaser, we will move those controls separately. So I'm going to crank the depth quite a bit here. I'm going to bring the depth up to 8, and I'm going to bring the rate down to 2 with 0 feedback and see what that sounds like. That's getting into that late 70s outlaw country kind of phasing sound. That sounds like something you'd hear on a Merle Haggard record. I can dig that a lot. It's still a bit fast for me, feels like, weirdly enough. So we think about great phaser users, not just the Muton or Mutation Phasor, but of phasers in general. Names that come to mind for me, and I think for most guitar players, are going to be Eddie Van Halen, they're going to be Brian May, and they're going to be Merle Haggard. Weirdly, those are the three guys, which could really not be farther apart, but they kind of embody that late 70s phasing sound. And I think right here we found very easily that outlaw country, what I would call like a Texas phaser sound. That kind of phaser, you know? Which I know those aren't the right chords, but I don't want to get DCMA'd. We've got a sound that we like here. We've got this very, like I said, classic Texas sort of sound, I think. So let's add some feedback back to that and see what the difference really is with the feedback. I'm going to go ahead and bring the feedback knob all the way up to 5, which is again halfway, and see if we can really hear what the feedback is doing. Typically, you see a feedback control on a flanger, which are, ironically, pedals I'm not very fond of. And I think it's the feedback because it gives this quality that you'll hear, I think, immediately. That yawing, wah kind of sound that people would describe as vocal and some guys really like, to me is distracting. It takes away from the note and starts to sound more like a special effect rather than something that's adding tastefully to the guitar, to me. But I want to see if we can find a place where the feedback knob is usable. So let's see if we can find a place that the feedback knob is usable with this sound, then we'll dial it out, try to find another sound that we like, and try to hit those 3 sounds that I would associate it with. And then at the end, we will turn the amp up a little bit here at the end of that exercise and try to find some overdriven tones to get closer to how Billy Corgan would be using this. So we're going to go ahead and dial the feedback control out, and we're going to take the depth and turn it all the way up to 10 and set the rate to 1. Now we're getting into what I would describe as the Brian May phasing sound. Previously we were dealing kind of with that outlaw country kind of sound. Now I think we're dealing with this very Brian May phaser. When you think of a clean phaser kind of sound, which again we've got a kind of a very clean sound here, but I think you'll be able to tell nonetheless. What I immediately want to play, but I don't want to get DMCA'd for, is Tie Your Mother Down. That's the sound I hear. I think that immediately gets us there. So we're at 2 extremes on the knobs here. The depth at 10, the rate at 1. Now let's bring that feedback control in. And I'm going to bring the feedback control up to 3 and see what that gives us. There's certainly a change in the character between the two, but I'm not hearing enough of the feedback control for it to be overpowering. So let's see. That would certainly be a usable sound. I think that even actually gets us probably closer to Brian May's tone there. And at about 4 is where I feel like we kind of lose that. Contrary to what I feel like is going to sound good, I'm going to bring this knob all the way up to 10. And we're just going to see what it sounds like with the depth at 10, the feedback at 10, and the rate at 1. That's very 70s funk, I think. You can kind of hear that. So I think that's definitely a usable sound. It's not how I would normally think about using a phaser, but I can see its use and absolutely see why the original version of this phaser was very popular. So now let's see if we can find that Eddie Van Halen sound, which is an incredibly subtle sound. 3 on the feedback control, 5 on the depth, and in between 1 and 2 on the rate. Because Eddie Van Halen's phaser is just barely there, but if you were to remove it, you'll know. See, that's still not quite subtle enough. I'm going to back off on the feedback to 2. I'm going to push the depth up to about 7 and pull the rate back down to 1. Where it's barely there, but it's moving the signal, which is a good segue into what is a phaser and what's the difference between a 6-stage and a 4-stage phaser. So audio signals are in or out of phase with themselves and the rest of your hearing. What a phaser does is it shifts the phase, the audio phase of the signal, a certain number of degrees. A 4-stage phaser, like the Phase 90, the reason the Phase 90 is called the Phase 90 is because it shifts the phase 90 degrees every time it shifts. And that's why it's a 4-stage phaser, because you go 90 degrees, 180 degrees, 270 degrees, 360 degrees, back to 90 degrees. That's the shifting of the phase. A 6-stage phaser like this is divided into 6 equal segments rather than 4 equal segments and shifts that way. You're literally working with a different set of math with this phaser than you are with a 4-stage phaser. So there's no way to duplicate fully, truly, the sound of a 4-stage phaser with a 6-stage phaser because you're literally mathematically shifting your signal a different phase. But you can get very close, and a 6-stage phaser can do things that a 4-stage phaser just can't. The Phase 45, which is another famous MXR phaser, only shifts at 45 degrees. It's a much more subtle phasing, which is, there's often you'll find MXR special editions where your Phase 90 will have a Phase 45 version. Eddie Van Halen very famously originally used a Phase 45 until he got a script logo Phase 90. And his signature pedal has the ability to turn on a Phase 90 circuit and also a special voicing that has some of the coloration of a Phase 45. The approximation that you're getting here and the inclusion of the feedback control, it's a different beast, but you can get, as we've seen, very close. Normally, I test pedals when I can with bass, because bass players don't get enough love when it comes to pedal testing. And the reason I'm not doing that here is because phase on bass is very hard to perceive. Bass signals will override that phase cancellation because part of how phasing works is our perception of an object's location in a room, specifically the speaker, and you don't perceive bass from a location, which is why they can put the bass bins in a venue in just random places and it doesn't feel like you can't hear the bass. So that is why we won't really be using the phaser here. You can if you're playing way up here on the bass, hear it somewhat, but that's kind of the equivalent of playing way down here on the guitar, which we've done a lot of. So I think the idea carries. But if you want to see a phaser demo on bass, let me know. We'll see what we can figure out to make that work. So I'm intrigued to see now how we would go about getting those Billy Corgan tones. Billy Corgan is running usually, especially on Gish, into a very hot amp. But in eras after that, there is a clean amplifier, like our Princeton Reverb here. He's using a Marshall, but a clean amp nonetheless, with a fuzz in front of it, or an overdrive in front of it. So for this experiment, we're going to set change, we're going to get a drive pedal, we're going to run it into the front of our phaser here, and try to get those 90s phase tones where the phasing is very intense and coloring of the overdrive. All right, we've got an overdrive pedal that you will be seeing a video on here pretty soon. The WATS tube squealer. In the front of the amplifier, this is the tone with no phase. That is max drive, level at noon, and tone at noon with the humbucker switch in. We've got our phaser, again, set, no feedback, depth at 5, rate at 5. Again, just too space gun effecty to me. I'm going to take the rate and bring that down to 3 and bring our depth all the way to 8 and keep that feedback out and see how we get. We are going guitar, tube squealer, into the Mutation Phasor. So I wonder now, was Billy running his phaser into his fuzz? Normal pedal effect order is typically wah-wah, fuzz, compressor, overdrives, distortions, modulation, like phaser, delay, reverb, tremolo. But in the time before pedals, before overdrive pedals existed, that phaser would be hitting an amp that was overdriving. So really, placing your phaser before your drives kind of makes more sense when you're chasing certain sounds. So let's flip this around. We're back, and we've swapped the order of our pedals. Now, we have our phaser running into our overdrive, into our amp. This is our drive signal. This is with our rate set to 2.5, our depth set to 2, and no feedback. As you can see, the phaser is now being overdriven. We can take our rate back up to 10 and our depth back down to... And you get that immediate, like, machine gun kind of sound. Or we can take our rate, put it around 6.5, and our depth around 3. And you see that the effect is intensified. So you've got to be even careful with the knobs. So I'm going to take this back to 4 and take our depth all the way up to 10. Keep our feedback off. Versus. So now we're going to find a clean sound that we really like and see what that sounds like when we run it into the overdrive. And we're going to try to include the feedback in here so we can really see what we're getting from that knob. I've got the rate about 1.5, and the depth at about, let's move that to about 6.5. And we'll bring the feedback in at 2. That's, again, getting into that Brian May territory, I think. Not that I can play like Brian May, or would ever try, but now we're going to overdrive the amp, see what we get. I'm going to pull back on my tone control and try to take a little bit of that brightness out. So let's go ahead, we're going to switch this into single coil mode because the phaser is adding a ton of brightness. Let's see if that helps us get closer to that mid-rangey crunch we want. We can really see how the overdrive signal changes the effect. So now, it's time for humbuckers. We are back, this time, with our custom shop Cabronita with a DiMarzio Super Distortion Filtertron in the bridge position. We've got some push-pulls that we'll do some fun stuff with shortly, but here's our clean sound, no phaser, no drive. Every time I put this guitar down, I think, man, do I really need 2 Cabronitas? And then I pick this one back up, and I'm like, well, I can't get rid of that one. So now, with some phase, again, I'm going to pull that feedback out. I'm trying not to play anything that will get my video taken down, and it's very hard because that sound specifically is making me want to play Jerry Reed. That is... So now let's add a little drive from our tube squealer. Now we've dimed the feedback control. Why? Because why not? that's very much a soloing kind of tone. With that feedback dime that really gets vocal and cuts through, and our overdrive is constantly adding a fair amount of mids to our mid-scoop amplifier, we can get that kind of as you can hear, there's some ambient background noise. That's created by the fact that we're shotgunning a massive amount of phasor into a driven signal, and it's amplifying the ambient moving of the phasor. So if you need help visualizing what a phasor is doing, that's the phasing. That's it phasing a full 360 degrees in 6 movements. Let's go ahead and bring the rate up to 3 and the depth over to 4. We'll leave the drive on, but we're going to back that drive off quite a bit. And we've been playing a TS-10, let's play a TS-808. I'm sure you're sick of hearing that lick now, but I'm trying to play the same thing often enough that you can understand it. In nearly 30 years of playing the guitar, in 15 of building amps and building pedals, I get so frustrated when I watch demos and they never play the same thing twice. So I don't actually have any sort of idea of what that sounds like in that position, on that guitar, on those strings. And so that's why I'm repeating myself a lot. And if you hate it, let me know in the comments. And again on clean. So now there's a cool trick we can do with this guitar that will let us hear some different sounds out of this phasor. And that is putting this pickup in parallel. Normal humbuckers are run in series, which is to say the north coil runs into the south coil and then to the pots and the output. Right now, we're taking each coil individually as a single coil, running them to the volume and tone and the output. So series sounds like this, and parallel sounds like this. Scooped in the mids, brighter and chimier. And that gives us something a little different and makes some of these sounds, I think, a touch more usable. I think the mids are really that push through with this phasor. So let's go ahead, let's keep that rate low. Let's bring the depth just for the outro here. We're going to bring that depth up to 7. We're going to bring the feedback up to 1.5. We're going to up our reverb just a touch and play a little bit and call it a day.